Hello again and welcome to a brand new series involving Unreal and Wwise, where today we are basically doing the adding game sound series but with Wwise and Unreal instead of Fmod and Unity. The plan is, if you haven't seen that series, is we're going to take a game off the Epic Games marketplace. We're going to open it up in the Unreal Engine. This is UE4, not 5. We're then going to integrate a new Wwise project into it, and then through a series of videos I'm going to be adding loads of different sounds and music and stuff to all of the mechanics in the game. You basically follow along and learn as we go, and that's the plan anyway. As this is episode 1 or part 1, things are going to be nice and simple. We're just going to introduce ourselves to the game itself. We're going to get it downloaded, installed, and we're going to add a few simple footstep sounds just to get the ball rolling. Now the game we're going to be using is this, the one in front of you. It's called Unreal Engine Hour of Code, and it was made by Epic Games as a basic tutorial game, really. You use it to practice code and blueprints and implementing audio into Unreal, so this is perfect for us. The only downside to using this is that when you download it, unlike the 2D game kit we were using in Unity, this one doesn't come with a fully built level at all, or levels. So what my plan is to implement as many sounds as we can. Then once we get to a certain point where we've run out of mechanics to add sounds to, I don't know, we'll have to do it ourselves basically. I'm sure there's tutorials that Epic Games have either on their sort of learning platform or on YouTube or something that I can link as we go, so I can say, hey, we need to install or add this mechanic. You guys can go away and do that, and then come back to my videos. And if you think about it, this should really help us understand how Unreal works by building these mechanics ourselves. So once we come to add sound to them, we'll understand how they work and where we need to add the sounds to and how we're going to sort of interact with them, if that makes sense. So we'll see how this goes. There's going to be a lot more work than there was in the previous one, but I've got a good feeling about this one. Now before we start, if you're interested in hearing updates from myself or getting extra learning content involving Fmod, Unity, Wwise, Unreal, all of that stuff, then I have a newsletter that you can sign up to. I'll have a link in the description for you to sign up to that, and if you do, you get a free lesson from my Fmod and Unity Essentials course. So before you start, check out that link in the description. Okay, intro's out of the way. Now it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up the Epic Games launcher, and you're going to want to find this, the Unreal Engine Hour of Code. All you do is you go to the marketplace, type that in, Unreal Engine Hour of Code, search, and it should be the first thing you find. What you want to do is download, install it, and create a project. I've already got it downloaded and installed, so what I'm going to do is come to Library, and I'm going to create a new project from here. Now at the moment, it's only compatible with Unreal Engine 4.25 or 4.26. That might change in the future, but for now, you'll probably want to use one of those two, or make sure you have one of those two versions of Unreal installed. So I'm going to come down here to my vault where that project is, or that template Hour of Code is kept. Create project. Going to make sure it's with 4.26, and I'm just going to call it, not all of that, just call it Hour of Code, and I'm going to hit create. Now, whilst that's sort of installing and building a new project for me, in the background you'll notice I've got the Wwise launcher open already. The Wwise launcher we're obviously going to use to install a Wwise project into our Unreal one, but in this video I'm not going to talk about how to do that, as it's dead simple and I've already done it in a previous video. So I'll have a link in the top right corner to a card that you can click on and learn how to integrate a Wwise project with an Unreal one. Okay, so it looks like I've got a new project called Hour of Code, so I'm going to open that up. I'm then going to open up a Wwise project and integrate the two together. Okay, here we are. So this is my empty project of the Hour of Code game kit in Unreal, and here is my empty Wwise project that is also integrated with it. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I'll say this now because it might be relevant to you. The versions I'm using is Wwise 2021.1.3, and the version of Unreal is 4.26.2, I think it was. So the first thing I'm going to do is just simply play the game and just show you what we're working with here, essentially. Now, as I said earlier, this game is sort of half built because the idea is you're supposed to go in, follow some tutorials, and finish the rest of it and add the rest of the mechanics. So we will do that, but first I just want us to get familiar with what we've got to work with, essentially, as this is what we're going to start adding sounds to until we run out of things to add sounds to, and then we'll add those mechanics in later. So we've got this little third-person character here, which he can sort of jog around, He can jump up and down like that. And he can also sprint. If I walk and hold shift at the same time, he also sprints really fast. Okay. And that's pretty much it. We're kind of stuck in this room here. We've got some stairs, a little basement-y bit here, some gold blocks, don't know what they do, some cubes and boxes which we can't jump on, sadly. That's a bit boring. And then there's this platform, but if we try to jump on it, we just fall through it. And that's the first example of one of those mechanics that hasn't been added yet. So when we need to add that mechanic, you know, that platform, which I assume moves from one end of this sort of hallway to the end, we will. But for now, we're just going to, like I say, use what we've got. Speaking of which, the first thing we're going to do today is add some footsteps to that character. So when he walks and runs around, we want to hear some tile footsteps, okay? That's all we're going to do for today. Okay, so let's jump over into Wwise and let's have a look at basically, well, put some footstep sounds into our Wwise project to then go into Unreal. First thing I'm going to do is, I'm in the wrong sort of layout of Wwise. So Wwise has loads of layouts which you can use for different things. We want to start in the designer, as that's where you sort of import audio, design how it's going to be played back, etc. So you can either press F5 or go to layouts, click designer, and here we go. This is like the main area of Wwise, despite the fact that it all looks the same, but this is the main bit. What we're going to want to do is in the Project Explorer, go to audio. We're going to want to come to actor mixer hierarchy and click on default work unit. Now this is where you basically create your sounds. Later on, we're going to add those sounds into what's called an event, and then in Unreal, we're going to trigger those events. In the case of the footsteps, whenever the little third person character takes a step, we want to trigger one of our events. But like I say, for now, we want to start by adding sounds. Now in Wwise, there's lots of different types of sort of sounds, or containers they're called, that dictate how your audio files are going to be played. The most basic one is a sound effects container. There is a random container, which we're actually going to use in a second, sequence container, switch container, and so on. And they do different stuff. So a sound effects one literally just plays an audio file. The sequence, or the switch container rather, allows you to switch between two other containers, so you can play sounds differently depending on what you use to control your switch. We'll look at that later on. Sequence container, you just play different sounds one after the other. And a random container allows, well, tells Wwise to randomly pick a group of audio files or containers or sound effects. Now this is what we want, because we want to play some random sound effects. We don't want each footstep to sound identical. That would be dumb and not believable. So let's click random container, and I'm going to call this simply running. Okay, so let's import some audio into our random container. So let's right click on it. Let's click import audio files, and let's click add files. Now the files I'm going to use, I'm actually going to share with you guys. They're just some like footstep sounds that are like, I just pulled off of Soundly, so they're like, you know, if they're free, they're not mine. But I'll share them with you somehow in a link in the description below this video. I'm not sure how yet, because the Hour of Code game kit, it comes with some sound effects, but not many. So we'll use them as we go. Oh, whoops, wrong folder. We'll use them as we go, but there's no footsteps, sadly, so I've had to quickly put these together. So let's have a look. We want running. I'm going to start with the tile material footsteps, and later on in the series, probably in the next episode, we'll look at adding different material sound effects. But for now, seeing as we're just running on tiles, we're going to start with these tile sounds. So I'm going to take the first 6 of the running sounds, click open, and it brings you to this page. Just click import, and there we go. So we now have a random container with 6 files. So whenever we play this random container, it plays a different sound. Now what we can do is, with the random container running selected, we can go to general settings, and we can click under this play type section here. We can determine in what order they are played in, or how they're randomized, I suppose is a better way to describe it. So let's click shuffle, and I'll leave this as 1. So this basically gives you the option of deciding how many times you want a different sound to play before a sound that's already played has repeated itself. So if, say, the running 01 file played, then the second one played, how many more new sounds we have to play before we can go back to 1, that first one. So I'm just going to leave that as 1, but keep it as shuffle so it's nice and random. What I'm also going to do to add a bit more randomization to this is I'm going to randomize the volume and the pitch that these sounds play at. So the way you do that is you come to either the pitch or the volume here on the left side of your general settings tab, and you click the little circle that almost looks like a Pepsi sign, where it's got like a circle, or the Pepsi symbol, it's got like a circle and a wave through it. I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to click enable, and then we can set like a range between which we want our volume to be randomized. Now, whilst it's at 0, that doesn't mean it will sort of, well, hold on, let me explain again. If I say set the range between -2 and 2, that will basically randomize our volume within like a range of 4. It doesn't matter where we set the volume, so we could say set it to -10 decibels. It's not going to jump anywhere random between -2 and 2 decibels. Instead, it's going to randomize it by either -2 of -10 or +2 of -10, i.e. -12 and -8. So yeah, it just gives you a range between wherever your volume is at that it will randomize the volume between. Cool, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to probably leave the volume at, well, just leave it at 0 for now. And then let's do the same with pitch. Let's click on the Pepsi symbol next to it. Let's click enabled. The minimum offset, I'm going to say 150, and the max, I'm going to say 50. Okay, and now if we play the random container a few more times, it's not a massive difference. In fact, you can barely even notice it, but it's just a nice little touch to make things a bit more detailed, I suppose, and random. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create 2 random containers, one called running and one called walking, as there's 2 animations, a running and a walking animation, that for this episode I'd like to add some sounds to. So what I'm going to do is quickly click on the random container, and I'm going to copy it and paste it. There we go. And then let's change the name of running 01 to walking. We also don't want the same files, so let's highlight all of these and delete those. Let's right click on walking. Let's go import files, add files, and this time I'm going to add, where are they? My tile walking sounds, and just import them. There we go. And now we've got the same. The reason why I copied and pasted it instead of starting a new random container is because look, we've still got the randomization settings we said, as well as our shuffle setting. Cool, so that saves us a little job. The one difference I will make though is I'm going to drop the volume of the footsteps in walking to about -7. Okay, so now we need to save what we've done. You'll notice there's a little asterisk that's appeared next to default work unit. That basically means it hasn't been saved. So let's hit Control S on our keyboard, and now it's been saved. Okay, so that's step 1. We've got our 2 random containers that when played will play random footstep sounds. Now, like I said earlier, we want to put those into events. So next, let's move over to the events tab. Now I'm going to click on the default work unit. I'm going to create a new event. All we have to do is click this little button here, create new event. And the first one I'm going to call running. I'm basically going to call these the same names as those random containers, just so we can match them up easy. So there's running and there's walking. So using this, the event property editor, this window here, we want to assign those containers to our new events. So with one of them selected, so the walking one, I'm going to click audio. I'm going to go to my walking random container and just drag it in like that. Cool, so it's assigned to that event. By default, it's going to basically tell that random container to play, but we don't have to tell it to play. We could tell it to stop if it was already playing. We could maybe change some stuff like the volume or the pitch of it. And if we want, we can add, more than one container to it. We can add a running one or just a random sound effects file, and we can tell them to stop or, change the pitch of them. And yeah, basically what's going to happen is in Unreal is when we trigger this walking event, all of these things that we list are going to happen. Now, of course, we don't want all of these things to happen, so I'm just going to quickly delete these second 2 I added. All we want is for when the walking event is triggered, for the walking random container to play a random sound. So let's click on the running one. Let's do the same. Let's go audio, drag running in. And as you can see, it hasn't been saved, the default work unit that contains our events. So let's hit Control and S. There we go. Right, step 1 and step 2 are done. Step 3, we need to add our events to our sound bank. Now, the sound bank is like the file that's basically going to be physically put into our Unreal project for Unreal to read and go, okay, we want to use this event and play these sounds. Basically reads all the work we've done in Wwise, essentially. So step one, if you imagine, is making those containers and deciding how they want to play. The event sort of holds those random containers, and you can also put multiple in an event, play them in different sequences and stuff. Then the sound bank takes the event and all the events and basically holds everything. So let's go to our sound banks. Now, in order to do that, we're going to need a new layout. So let's go to the Layouts tab at the top, and click Sound Bank, or press F7. And here we go. So we've actually got no sound banks at the moment. So let's also go to the Sound Banks Project Explorer. See, we've got no sound banks. What we need to do is make one. So let's click on the default work unit. Let's click this little button here that says Create New Sound Bank, and give it a name. So I'm just going to call mine main, as this is going to be my main soundbank file. And later on, we might look at making multiple soundbank files for different purposes. For example, if you've got sounds that only play, say, like a couple of times in a game and then are barely used, you don't want them loaded in all at once because your game's not using them. So to save on memory, you can add those sounds or those events of those sounds to its own sound bank and only load it in as and when you need it. But for sounds that reoccur quite a lot, like player footsteps, we'll just put them in a main sound bank and just keep that loaded in. So yeah, there's our new sound bank. If we go to the sound bank manager and click on the default work unit, you can see it here. I'm just going to tick it to kind of activate it. Then what we need to do is assign those events we created to it. So we've got our event viewer down here with our 2 events. So this allows us to click on our events and drag them into our bank, just like that. And there we go. So those events are now in that file. Well, we haven't created the file yet, but they will be. Before we do create the soundbank file, we just need to decide what platforms we're going to build our sound bank for, as well as what language. These aren't really necessary, well, they are necessary, but they're not really relevant to us yet because we're just doing some basic stuff. When we, if we were to have like multiple languages, or we were actually trying to build this game for different platforms, and maybe we might not, tick Mac or Windows and stuff, or we might make changes between them. But for now, we're just going to tick all of them, and we want to generate this sound bank, or build it, create the actual file, and then Wwise will automatically put it in Unreal for it to read. So let's go generate all. We can select generate selected if you wanted to generate a specific sound bank. But let's just click generate all for ease, and there we go. No errors, we're all good to go. So that's basically everything on Wwise. So a quick recap, in case you're completely new and that was a bit rushed for you. You want to start in the designer layout in the audio tab of the Project Explorer, and you want to basically, in the actor mixer hierarchy, clicking on the default work unit, you basically want to create a container that you put all your sounds to. So we've created 2 random containers that hold random footstep sounds. Then in the events tab, you want to create events that are going to hold those random containers, as you can see here, and tell Unreal what to do with them, i.e. play them. Then once you've made those, you want to go layouts, sound bank, create a sound bank that's going to hold your events. So it's like, imagine a tree. You've got containers, events, and the sound bank file. Last thing to do is just save our project with Control S and jump back into Unreal and basically get them over here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is in my content browser, which is basically how you browse all your sort of files and assets within Unreal, click Contents. This is the main folder. It works just like your Project Explorer, or your File Explorer rather, on Windows, or the Finder app in Mac. You just dig through a load of files, or folders rather, until you find the files you want to edit and change. You can just access it through Wwise itself. So here I'm going to create a folder called Wwise, and this is where I'm going to store all my Wwise assets. Let's double click on that. Then I'm going to create a folder called Banks, and a folder called Events, as we're going to need to almost create containers for the sound bank and the events we created in Wwise. So in my Banks folder, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Audio Kinetic and select Audio Kinetic Bank. Then I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it main and hit enter. And just like in Wwise, it has a little asterisk next to it, meaning it needs saving. So I'm going to double click on it and click save. There we go. Then we're going to go back to the Wwise folder. I'm going to open events, and I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to create a container for my events. So I'm going to go Audio Kinetic, audio kinetic event this time. Now, it's very important that both with that bank we just created and these events we're creating, we're naming these identical to what we created in Wwise. So if I call an event running, it is critical that I spelt it exactly the same in Wwise. So you can see, got running, walking, same goes for Soundbanks. So that Soundbank I created earlier in Unreal, that container, I called it main specifically so that it was identical to the Soundbank in Wwise. So let's go back to Unreal. I've got running. Then what I want to do is double click on it, and I actually want to assign it to that Soundbank container. So where it says required bank, I'm going to click the drop down menu, click main, and hit save, and then close that. And then just do that one more time, because obviously we created 2 events. So audio kinetic event, and let's go walking. There we go. Double click on it and assign it to the bank and save. Okay, so whilst we have these events here and our Soundbank in Unreal, and we've also generated our Soundbank file in Wwise, there's still one more thing we need to do in order to connect the two, and that's basically give Unreal a bit of a kick, a refresh, and tell it that we've created new sounds in Wwise. You can tell we haven't done this because if I right click on one of my events and click play event, we don't hear anything, okay? So to fix that, let's go Wwise, Banks, then I'm going to right click it and click generate selected Soundbank. Then you get to choose the bank you want to generate as well as the platforms. I'm just going to click generate all. And then you get a little thing in the bottom right corner there that goes ding, hey, it worked, you're all good to go. Now if I go back to Wwise, events, and I right click walking, there we go, we hear it. Cool, so let's just save our project there as well as save our events and our bank. Okay, so we've got our events, they play random footsteps, we've got them in the bank and they're in Unreal. We just now have to set them up and attach them to that animation of our character running around. So the first thing we need to do is find the file that contains the animation of the character, basically. So I've done a bit of digging in this project already, so I know where it is. Let's go back to the content folder. Now we're going to want to navigate through Teachers Marketplace, Assets, Character, Character again, Animations, and then here we are. Here we have all the animations for our character. Now there's quite a lot, but the two we're going to look at today is the Epic Character Run animation file, and same thing but with walk instead. Okay, so this is there's actually 2 for each. Each file, as you can see here, this one says Epic Character _run. This one says Epic Character _run _anim. The one that says _anim is the one we are interested in. I did some testing and this is the one that our audio files will play back on. So let's just double click it to open that file. And as you can see, it contains a file of our character jogging on the spot or running. Now what we want to do is using this animation is we actually want to create little marks or like points in time in this animation where the player actually, the footstep of the player or the character hits the ground, and on those frames is where we want to make a call and say to our game, hey, the character's just taken a step, we want to play a sound. So the first thing we need to do is pause our animation with the pause button here, and using the timeline is we want to find moments when the character's foot hits the ground. So what I'm going to do is just hold right click with my mouse. I'm going to use WASD to move about and just reposition my camera so I can see the footstep. There we go. Then using this timeline, I'm going to move it around until that first footstep hits the ground, so about there. Then what I want to do is create a notifier. Now a notifier basically goes on an animation's timeline and does what I just explained. It like makes a call essentially. It says, hey, this thing happened. So you get notified tracks. You can create a new notified track if you want, but I'm just going to use this default one that they've given us called 1. I'm going to right click, click add notify, new notify, and then give my new notify name. So I'm just going to call it play run step. There we go, and just make sure it's nice and lined up with the marker. There we are. Then let's scroll through again and find the second footstep. So it's about there, hits the ground there. Then we want to right click again, add notify. This time, because we've created a notify, we want to select skeleton notifiers. And that basically, it's basically all the notifiers you've already created, okay? So let's reuse play, run, step. And again, just make sure it's nice and lined up. There we go, cool. And let's give that a save with Control S. Okay, so now we've got those notifiers, we want to give them some functionality. Basically telling them what to do when they're called. Now in Unreal, with every sort of model that has animations, those animations are tied to what's called an animation blueprint. Now blueprints are what we're going to use throughout this series to add functionality to our game and make it do stuff essentially. There's two ways to do that in Unreal. It's using blueprints, which is a visual way of scripting, use like dots and lines and stuff, which we'll see in a bit. But there's also C++, which is basically just raw code, which we're not going to do. We might do later on down the line if it becomes necessary, but I think I want to focus on blueprints for now, as it seems to be what most people gravitate towards as a nice and visual, easy to jump in on. But anyway, like I said, with every model that has animations, those animations are attached to an animation blueprint. At the top of this window here where we're looking at our animation, you can see we can click, by clicking blueprint here, we can access that file. You can also see that same file if we have a look in this sort of row of all of our animations. Right at the beginning, we've got epic character anim BP, which stands for blueprint. This is the file here that's attached to all of these different animations that are associated with our third person character. In fact, if I hover my mouse over blueprint, if you read that line of text, you can see that file location, and the file right at the end is the same. It's epic character anim blueprint. So this is what we're going to use to add functionality to our animations. So let's click on blueprint and open it up. Okay, and here we are. I'm actually going to quickly full screen this. And now the first thing we want to do is quickly click on where it says event graph at the top, as this is where we'll be able to interact with those notifiers we created. And yeah, these are blueprints basically. As you can see, there are a whole bunch of lines and dots that create functionality. Before we create our own, let's quickly go over or sort of generalize what they are and how they work. So yeah, blueprints are made up of nodes, which are these boxes, as you can see here, and pins, which we can connect by sort of drawing lines from one another. The idea is that you sort of start with a node that sort of executes an event or, triggers something, and then using different nodes, you can basically tell things to happen. So using those notifiers that we created earlier, we can create some functionality using blueprints. So let's find some empty space. You can hold right click, by the way, and just drag the sort of camera around. Let's right click, and what we want to do is basically use this first tab here, add anim notify event. Let's drop that down, and we can see our notifier. Now this is in the form of an event node. Now event nodes are red, and they're basically what triggers a sort of chain of blueprints to start, right? So everything starts with a red node. So let's zoom in a bit and let's work with this red node. Okay, so once this notifier is triggered by the animation, again, if we quickly go back to the animation, these notifiers will be triggered whenever this animation hits a specific frame. Once it does, the play run step notify will trigger in our blueprints, causing something to happen. The question is, what do we want to happen? Well, quite simply, we just want one of our events to play. So to do that, what we want to do is use another node that Wwise provides for us. So let's right click empty space, and let's find it. Now it's called post event, so let's just type post event, and there we go. The blueprint has found it for us and suggested it, so let's click post event, and this is it. This is like the main node that Wwise provides you with. When we integrate a Wwise project into Unreal, we get all these extra nodes, and this is one of them. It's probably the main one because it allows you to play some of your events we created earlier, such as the running and the walking event. All we have to do is select the event, so let's go to select asset, and you can see those events we created earlier in Unreal are here. So the running and the walking one. We're using the running animation, so we're going to start with running, so let's click on that. Now what we want to do is connect these two up. So we want to use these white pins. Now white pins are basically a kind of chain of events. Starting with an event, you use the white pin to say in what order you want something to happen. So once that notify is triggered, we want this post event node to activate and start and do its job, which is play a sound, okay? So it goes from left to right, nice and easy. So these white pins are called execution pins because they execute things to happen, they tell them to happen. These blue ones, and this green one you can see on our post event node, these are data pins, and these basically share information or send information from different nodes. Now you don't have to use all of these pins for this to work, but in this scenario there is one that we have to connect to something, and that's this actor pin. The reason why is because we need to basically tell our blueprint in which point in space in our game do we want this sound to play? Because if you think about it, let's jump back into the game itself, or the sort of preview of it. If you hold the right click and use WASD, you can sort of move the camera around. If you think about it, we could play these footsteps from any point in the game, really, that we wanted to. But specifically, we don't. We want to specify that we want them to come from our player's feet, right? So that's what we need to tell our blueprints to do. Not only what to play, but where it's going to play. So let's go back to that other tab and let's do that. Now, an actor in Unreal is sort of basically a thing. It's like an object that, again, exists within this world. So our camera is an actor. These boxes are all sort of copies of an actor, and the player is an actor as well. So if we go back to that tab once again, our post event node is asking from which actor object reference, from where in our space, or what object in our space do we want to play these sounds at? And again, the answer is from this guy right here. So the way we do that, we want to drag a line or a line off this pin here, and then we want to look for a node called get owning actor, and this is basically going to allow us to reference the location in which our player is. Now this is a animation blueprint specific node, so if we were using a normal blueprint for most actors that we can attach to, which we'll look at later on, we'd use something different, but for now this works perfectly. As you can see, the target is self, i.e. the object basically itself that this animation is attached to. And for now, that's literally it. So let's hit Control S and save it. What we also want to do is hit this compile button in the top left corner, as this basically, well, compiles our blueprint and allows us to use it. So let's click that, and now we're good to go. So let's minimize this window, let's hit play, and a moment of truth, do we hear our footsteps? Survey says we do. Brilliant. Cool, there we go. We're already cooking with gas. Nice one. So that's the run animation. Now let's quickly knock out the walking animation, and I think we'll call it there. So again, in this window here, in the same folder that we were in last time where all of our animations were, let's click the very last one, walk_anim, double click that. We're going to do the exact same thing. This is the walking animation, by the way. We're going to find where the footsteps land, and we're going to create a new notify. Okay, so there's one about there, so we're going to right click, add new notify, and this one I'm going to call play walk step. Can't remember what I called the last one, to be honest. Hopefully that's somewhat similar to it. And there we go. Cool, I've got my two new notifiers, so I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to jump back into the blueprint. Again, the blueprint is attached to all of these animations that are part of this character. So as you can see, it's identical to the one we were just using. This is the area up here that we created, and this is all the stuff that came before it. So despite the fact we're using a different animation, we've got access to the same blueprint. So for now, I'm literally going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to right click, I'm going to click add anim, this time use the play walk step notify event. Let's drag the execute pin, let's type post event, this time let's select the walking event, and again the actor, let's type get owning actor. There we go, job done. Let's hit save, let's hit compile, then let's minimize this window, let's play our game, and now we want to listen to the walking sounds. Now, to trigger the walking sounds, we're going to have to slow our character right down, and the easiest way to do that I found is kind of walking against this wall here. So I'm going to do that now. There we go. So slightly softer footsteps. Cool, there we go, and that'll do for now. Now I've got a few ideas for the next couple of videos. They are all based on footsteps. What we're going to do is we're going to extend some more functionality to this footsteps. I want to add some materials to it. There's also a sprint option, which we looked at earlier. You can hold shift and sprint. So I want to use parameters to sort of speed up the sounds, make them a bit louder, change the pitch a bit, and yeah, make things more interesting basically. But hopefully that was a good introduction for this series. Now, my question to you, was this sufficient? I'm not used to teaching, I've done a few videos, but I'm not used to teaching Unreal and Wise. I'm hoping I didn't skip over a load of stuff that you didn't understand or you thought needed explaining, but to me just came to me naturally, or vice versa. Maybe there's, I don't know, stuff that I didn't address. Let me know your thoughts, keep me posted, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. As always, link in description for all the what did I say? The footsteps. There's some links to some documentation that will help you out about nodes and pins and stuff. And also my newsletter you can sign up for if you're interested in more stuff from me. But yeah, I've been Henry Scott. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.